Most zombie movies have a very similar plot, in the sense that there's the living and then there's the undead. Once a zombie, always a zombie, unless somebody puts a bullet in the head. But how about a world where there's a third group? Uninfected humans, the infected zombies, and the cured? Yup, that's the theme this movie, The Cured, explores. Humans, zombies, and ex-zombies. So stick around to see what the movie covers and why it's worth watching. How it all began. This zombie thriller starts with a little bit of instructional text which informs us about a viral pandemic which has affected the continent of Europe for several years. Ireland was among the worst hit countries there, and whilst the rest of the continent was successful in controlling the contagion, this country did not manage to do so without suffering heavy losses to life. Eventually, a cure for the disease was discovered. However, only 75% or 3/4 of the infected population was successfully treated and cured, while the remaining 25% were deemed as resilient to the cure, unfortunately for everyone involved. The government of Ireland is in the midst of an ongoing debate as to what must be done with these seemingly incurable 25%. The next scene shows our protagonist, a young man called Synopsis Brown, washing his face and seeing the telltale mark of the viral infection under his eye, a sad reminder of his time being a bloodthirsty zombie. He then sits next to his friend and former zombie companion, Connor, as they sit and speculate what life is going to be like back in the outside world after their almost 4-year quarantine. Synopsis is then interviewed and given the talk by Sergeant Cantor, a military superior who's in charge of managing the released cured population in their city. There he informs Synopsis about his rights, or lack thereof, as a rehabilitated member of society, and that he's fortunate enough to be accommodated at his sister-in-law Abby's home. Not most are as fortunate as Synopsis, as most of the cured are looked down upon by society and even by close friends and family. This forces them to live like the outcasts of society in a miserable government accommodation. Life on the outside. Next, Synopsis, Connor, among the bus full of cured individuals, are seen entering the city amidst a protest of people calling for the military to not reintroduce the cured, or as they call them, the scum, back into their city. Before parting ways, Connor embraces Synopsis and asks him not to tell her something very important here. The scene then cuts to clips of journalists interviewing people across the country, all of whom either shared their dissatisfaction with the government's decision or who showed or described outright violence and discrimination towards those who were cured. Abby is one such journalist. Synopsis comes home to Abby and his nephew, Cillian. Synopsis tells Abby how he picked a job back at the treatment center, the same place where he himself was cured of the infection. Synopsis makes himself at home with Abby and Cillian, growing closer to them over time. However, it's quite apparent that Synopsis is not able to overcome the nightmares of his past, regardless of if he's asleep or not. Flashbacks from his past, especially from the moment he was infected, and the death of his brother and Abby's husband, Luke. Connor decides to pay a visit to his home too, but is banished by his father, who refused to accept him back. Although a zombie is not in control of their actions, Connor is blamed for the death of his mother by his own father and is told to never come back after being called a monster. On his first day at work at the treatment center, Synopsis comes across a hospital room partition with an infected female groaning from behind it. He's set to work with Dr. Joan Lyons, a medical professional who is highly optimistic that a cure exists for those supposedly incurable 25%. To his surprise, Synopsis realizes that the infected individual does not try to attack him. The doctor then reveals that once an individual is infected, their cells retain a trace of the virus, making the currently infected ones feel that they're one of them, a zombie. This means that Synopsis, as well as those that have been previously infected by the virus, are now essentially immune to be attacked by the zombies. Connor and Synopsis meet at the cured person's accommodation for their regular visits by the authorities. And by that, I mean Sergeant Cantor. Cantor asks Synopsis to step aside as he wants Connor to not stray from work, lest he face consequence of the same. He even wants him to stop harassing his family and that they don't want him back. This infuriates Connor, who almost lunges at Cantor but is swiftly wrestled to the ground by him. "It's not your world anymore," says Cantor. This scene is important as it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Later, Connor visits Abby one day, straying away from his duties as a roadside cleaner. Abby is perhaps the only non-infected individual who shows compassion towards him. He feels a sense of comfort that he hasn't felt in a really long time. Connor decided to approach her because he knew she's perhaps the only person in the society who is accepting of cured individuals. Why else would she take Synopsis in? A turn for the worse. Synopsis walks into the treatment center one day to see two soldiers wrestling a female zombie in an attempt to either restrain or kill her. He tries to stop them, only to get pushed aside by a guard. This turns out to be enough for the zombie to break the other soldier's grasp and chase him down the hallway. As Synan chases after them to stop whatever is happening, a shot rings past him and she falls to the ground. The soldier decided to save his comrade and end the situation in a questionable manner. The city takes to heavy protests as an act of terror takes place somewhere within it. Connor attempts to convince Synan to join his cause, which goes by the name Cured Alliance, a small militia that seeks justice and equal treatment through acts of violence and arson. Synan agrees and eventually takes part in a few of these attacks, only to later find out that they weren't empty targets as he was previously told, but has led to the loss of innocent lives. Disgusted, he leaves Connor and the Alliance. A peaceful family dinner is interrupted when Connor decides to join Synan and his family one evening in an attempt to coerce Synan to join the cause once again. The next day morning, Cantor drops by at Abby's house, warning her of the ill intentions of the Alliance and hints at Connor and Synan having some part to play in it. Although skeptical, she agrees to inform Cantor of any strange activity that may take place. She successfully sneaks into the cured people's accommodation, records part of their meeting, and barely manages to escape with the evidence. Synan is attacked one night as an apparent hater breaks into their house and knocks him out cold. Abby suspects it to be somebody sent by Connor, but Synan is convinced of the imminent danger to his life and decides to approach Connor for help again. However, because of Abby's informing, a formal meeting at the accommodation is disrupted by the military, where Synan surrenders himself while Connor escapes with a few others. The most heartfelt scene then takes place, as Synan is confronted by Abby regarding the death of her husband Luke, when he eventually confesses his part in the death of his brother. She screams at Synan to get out of the house, which he painfully does. He meets up with Connor at a place he was told to be by a messenger. The only twist is that Synan has called Cantor there as well. In a foil attempt to arrest Connor, Cantor is brutally murdered by him, and Connor escapes once again. The Cured Alliance, with the help of the now desperate Dr. Joan, infiltrate the treatment facility where all the zombies are and end up releasing them. Fortunately for her, she's able to cure her love, the one she was so desperately trying to heal. Unfortunately, however, she gets attacked and killed by another shortly after. How it ends? Synan encounters Connor in an attempt to save his nephew, where he gets badly beaten but Connor gets shot. The family is successful in somehow finding their way back home safe, but things take a surprising turn when a zombie appears out of nowhere and bites Cillian just before Synan clobbers its head in. Synan stops the tearful Abby from shooting Cillian and takes him away from her with the promise that he will cure him. 8,000 newly infected individuals had been captured. This brought forth a new wave of resistance against the mass eradication of the new 25% incurable, as can be seen through the several Cured Alliance posters spread throughout the city with Connor's face in it. The cure found by Dr. Joan was revealed to the world. Synan goes into hiding with Cillian, as many infected individuals have decided to. We hope that you enjoyed this movie briefly explained. Tell us in the comment section down below, which other movies would you like us to cover next? Head out and check out more of our videos. Stay tuned for more.